Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast. Joined today, as I often am, by Giles Edwards
Hello, everyone.
and joined later in this program by Keith John Adams, the director of Ozma, the movie about a telepathic jellyfish.
Jellyfish.
I
Yeah.
almost said goldfish. It's a jellyfish for sure. Um, which if you like movies about telepathic jellyfish, this is your bag for sure.
Yeah, and a good year for jellyfish-esque shaped telepathic entities with the was it Paula in Space or whatever
I don't know what you're.
the Slam Dance movie had a
Oh,
similarly ambiguously formed lump of telepathic creature, but the
oh, that was like a
kombucha,
yeah,
yeah.
that was like a kombucha starter.
Yeah, yeah. I
At
see.
any rate, that's the movie we'll be talking about later. But first, let's go through the week's news and weird movie releases, of which there are not many, but what we do have is very high quality and of great interest to most people who follow us and follow weird movies. And we're going to start off with some news from probably the most successful weird movie director of the moment, seeing as David Lynch is not actually producing anything at
Nor
this.
Greenaway.
Yes, it's Yorgos Lanthimos striking while the iron is hot with two new upcoming projects. The one featured here, Giles, you can maybe explain what we're looking at.
Sure, I'll take a shortcut for the first of these two images. That's Yorgos Lanthimos, looking a bit pleased with himself, and I'm sure in the context we can't blame him. On the right-hand side is a film still from what I believe is a 2003 motion picture featuring an older gentleman reclined on a makeshift, we'll call it a medical restraint operation chair being looked over by a furtive fellow decked out in what looks like armor, protective gear of, well, again, medical variety, and a hat with any number of hopefully useful and not terribly dangerous implements upon it, resting his one hand on the reclined gentleman's shoulder, and the other hand, I I don't know, that might be a hammer or some other such comparably sophisticated implement of coercion or enforcement. All got a very run down feel to it. Lots of dial stuff, things going around, wire, tube metal, what's it's, all very dystopian looking to me.
Homemade,
Yes.
homemade sort of science equipment. And that, of course, is still from Save the Green Planet, which is as you say, 2003 Korean cult movie that has been almost since the date it was released 20 years ago, has been talked about as something that's ripe for a Hollywood or at least a uh, United States remake. And there has been a remake plans and discussions for many, many years. And that kind of died down. I probably heard about it first 5 years ago, or maybe even
Hmm.
more, that they were going to remake this, and all that talk died down, and now it's resurfaced with the name of a new director, an exciting new director. Can you guess who that might be, Giles?
um,
Any way
well,
to
I'm guessing these images aren't paired just for fun. I'm gonna say that exciting new director is Yorgos Lanthimos,
yeah.
and I think it could be quite amusing that yeah he's got cachet right now. He obviously has interest in this. Wouldn't it be fun if he made this movie in his native language of Greek?
probably, but I doubt, I don't know that he's going to go back to Greek. He might. One reason why I think a lot of directors who start out in small European cinemas like to direct in Hollywood or in English at least is because they have so much more access to such a wider variety of actors. You
Oh
know?
yeah, it was just a whimsical notion.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think that that would be his first remake ever. He Poor Things, his most recent hit, which is giving him all this cachet right now, was his first movie made from a not an original screenplay, first
Mm.
adaptation, and this would be his first remake. And it would be curious as to what he would bring to a movie that was already a pretty gonzo movie,
Hmm.
though one that isn't very Lanthimos has sort of an art house edge to him, and Save the Green Planet was very much had a B movie type feel to it. Did you see Save the Green Planet by chance?
No, but I remember when when you reviewed it a number of years back now, and certainly looks like something I will be checking out sooner rather than later because it's got a lot of elements to it I quite like, and as a general cinematic movement, it's pretty safe to rely on Korean filmmakers, it seems, of pretty much any given tier of fame to do interesting things, even with uninteresting material. And the material in Save the Green Planet, story-wise, seems quite interesting to start with.
Yeah, it'd be curious to see how Lanthimos is going to attack that kind of material, which is much different than anything he's done before. He has, gone to sort of a horror element with killing of a sacred deer, but it was still very much art house type
It was
horror.
a very talky, yeah, horror. Sure, it can, yeah, yeah, why not? But yeah,
Very
it's a very
weird.
talky people emotion thing with the deadly implications.
Yes, a talky people emotion thing. Uh, Ari Aster was at one time connected to this project, and he seems like a more natural choice, and he might still be producing or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it
And
past
this
him.
is just based on a report from Variety, but there's no other information about it. But Variety generally doesn't get things wrong. They don't generally report fanciful notions. So I expect this to happen. But speaking of Lanthimos, in that Variety article, they mentioned that before he gets to this, there's another movie of his coming out that will be coming out sooner because it's already in post-production. That is called Kinds of Kindness. Did you happen to look up any information about Kinds of Kindness, Giles?
Golly, I would have if that string of words had stood
Uh,
out to me slightly more. Um,
No. Okay. Well, let me describe what I know about it, which is not much at all because the plot is under wraps. It's been principal photography at least is completed. It's probably in post-production. It's an anthology film.
hmm,
It's was shot in New Orleans, which is always good, and it has a lot of the cast of Poor Things coming back. So he still
okay.
had access to Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, and Margaret Qualley, who had a very small role in Poor Things, and hopefully will have a larger role in this because
Yeah.
I think she's an actress who's been poised on the edge of breaking out for quite a while and hasn't quite made it, but I expect her to be a big name anytime. Also, notable about Kinds of Kindness is that Lanthimos is again working with his regular screenwriter for Dogtooth, The Lobster, and Killing of a Sacred Deer, whose name I almost certainly can't pronounce, but would venture a guess is Efthimus Philippou.
Yeah, it's yeah. With those kinds of names, it's often a transliteration. So yeah,
Yeah,
as we see it is typically the way to go.
yeah. So, and we don't know anything about that plot wise. We do know it's reported to be an anthology and that it should be out relatively soon. So, big news from Lanthimos, striking while the iron is hot. Uh, and those are things people may not be aware of, but look out for it very soon. As far as things that are coming out even sooner,
Hmm.
okay, Giles, can you describe the still I brought up for you at the moment?
Sure. All right. A very thicket, briary kind of look here. Undergrowth, twigs, trees, all kind of together. And in the center of this dirt and branch covered web work on screen is a I'm gonna go with distressed looking individual here, tousled brown hair, anguished kind of face, not looking quite right because it's obviously some form of figurine or puppet, which I know this to be a still from an upcoming stop motion film.
What's the
So
name of that stop motion film?
the name of that stop motion film, it's catchy, lets you kind of know up front what it's all about. It's called Stop Motion.
Yeah, from British stop motion animator Robert Morgan, um, who you may know from Bobby Yeah. Bobby, yeah, and he did a segment of very memorable, one of the more memorable segments of, I believe it was the second installment of ABCs of Death. He does
Mm.
stop motion that's very, very uncanny, very grotesque. This figure we have here has, I like that you called her distressed because I think of the way he does skin with his stop motion animation puppets as distressed. It's always, got warts or wounds or
Yeah.
a lot of blood or looks even putrefied sometimes. They're always very grotesque looking figures. And this one is probably one of the least grotesque
Mm.
that I've seen of his. But the movie, from what we can tell, is about a stop motion animator, a female who makes a stop motion animation film that perhaps comes alive, uh, something like that, because there are scenes of little stop animation figures interacting with the live action. And this is his first feature. It's been 10 years since Bobby Yeah came out and made kind of a sensation and made him a big name for people who follow animation closely, although not probably for the general public.
Uh,
Um, but people know who follow animation, especially stop motion animation, definitely know who Robert Morgan is. So we have the trailer. I'll put it up on 366weirdmovies.com. Did you watch it, Giles?
oh no, I did not. But looking at this guy's resume here, I have actually seen an earlier short film of his, The Cat with Hands,
Oh yeah, the cat.
from 2001, and that was well exactly what you'd hope for from a creepy horror stop motion kind of thing. So
Yeah,
uh,
he's done all shorts before this, and this is and all animated. He's never directed with live action mixed in. Um, so in the trailer, it's as I said, it's about a stop motion director making a stop motion film. There's a very creepy part to it where it's a female director and a little girl comes in and critiques her work and said she should do something scarier, and then launches into a little fairy tale of her own uh,
hmm,
that
nice.
is pretty damn creepy.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, this is showing up in cinemas near you, so I suspect you'll probably have a chance to see this before I do. I want to challenge you to use neither the words uncanny nor creepy in your review.
No way. I'm not. I decline that challenge. That would be doing a disservice to the readers. Um, there was one. It has already gotten a bunch of reviews, and they are generally good reviews. The one thing that gives me a little bit, it's not pause, but that I wanted to relate is no one in the reviews that I scanned has mentioned it as being particularly weird. It's more
Hmm.
sort of sounds like a traditional horror type film. Of course, Robert Morgan's animation is always going to be eccentric, to say the least.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, yes, with stop motion animation and especially stop motion, there's going to be a certain floor of, if not full blown weirdness, then the fact that it's a story is being told with this process is not normal looking. So,
Yeah. But yes, people are going to want to look at this for sure, and it's going to get a wide release for an IFC independent film. It's getting a wide release. So that's Robert Morgan's stop motion. And on to the next one. Giles, this still quickly.
yes, we have a open kind of field looking thing. Right hand side, a couple of classic parked cars, possibly foreign knockoffs. Huh. On the left, a man, older gentleman in a suit, white hair, mustache. He's kneeling, looking up in the not quite center of the image. An elevated individual, someone who has, I'm going to say, jumped or has otherwise achieved means of being airborne, holding a prayer style hands together thing as a foot may be heading toward the guy, but the elevated fellow seems a bit further in the distance to have a potential impact. He may have sprung himself from that long tube and canister device, which is to be found on any number of older style cars. Less so with these modern hybrid and electric type things. And crouched somewhat discreetly between the two older automobiles is a fellow similarly dressed to the aerial gentleman in a, we'll call it an Eastern Orthodox-esque religious garb.
Indeed, they're Orthodox monks, and an interesting detail is the guy who's flying through the air in mid leap is in full Orthodox garb, but with a what looks like a cheap pair of canvas tennis shoes.
Yeah, yeah, like Chuck Taylor
Yeah,
knockoffs.
and there is Cyrillic lettering on the license plate, so we know
Oh, yeah.
this comes from Mother Russia. It actually comes from Estonia, I believe, or is it Latvia? Oh, shoot.
Oh, shoot,
I think it's
indeed.
Estonia. Um, and what is it, Giles?
It is the Invisible Fight, made in Estonia, Greece, Latvia, and Finland.
Oh, so it was Estonia and Latvia. There you go.
Yes. Language Estonian, so who knows what other shots or talent they culled from the not too far away countries. So yes, an Estonian film coming out, set back in 1973.
Right. In the Soviet Union, and it's called,
The Invisible Fight, taking place at the USSR-China border.
and it's directed by,
It is directed by Rainer Sarnet.
I wanted you to mispronounce his name, not me.
You got it, buddy.
Who previously directed, oh, you don't know. You saw the movie he previously directed. It was
oh, okay. Yep. Yes.
very
Previously
different than
in
this one.
November.
It was November, which was a black and white movie about pagan Estonia as it is being converted to Christianity with a very fairy tale feel to it.
Mm.
So this is much different in color. Did you watch this trailer, Giles?
No, I read the thing. I forget about trailers,
Uh,
but so I apologize. But I am happy to see that he's moved the action forward by more than a century. I'll be interested to see his take on something only 50 years ago as opposed to 100 years ago. But it
so it
looks like
appears,
it's a comedy of sorts.
yes. This one, and there were funny minute moments in November, but they were more, black comedy and not highlighted. This one appears to be very zany. It's about a Soviet border guard who witnesses a crew of kung fu warriors wipe out a one of his little squadron of Soviet fighters, decides he wants to learn kung fu, and goes for some reason to the Eastern Orthodox Church to train in kung fu, who are not normally known for their kung fu prowess. I think that's maybe a joke that resonates with the Eastern European crowd more than with us, but I get it. It's very incongruous.
Oh yeah, it's yeah, different kind of mysticism altogether with its combat elements. So yeah.
Yeah, so they, completely a 180 from November in terms of style and subject matter. I guess it's still historical, so that's kind of similar. We don't know much about Rainer Sarnet because that was his only other movie that maybe he did some shorts or something, but November is the only other thing that we're aware of. And so this is quite different in style, but once again, it's gotten some good notice. Um, and it looks to be a zany cult comedy. At
Oh,
least
it was at Fantastic Fest this
it was
past
at
year.
Fantastic Fest, and
That
it's
probably makes sense.
still actually playing the festival circuit because it's going to be at Fantas Porto soon, where we have a gentleman who writes for our site who is attending Fantas
Yeah, I saw that. That's gonna
may
be
have
nice.
a opportunity to. I advised him to seek out this one when he goes, but it is also already being released over here, despite still technically being on the festival circuit. Um, Not a huge release. Um, it
Oh,
it's in Alamo Draft Houses, where it seems like an Alamo Draft House style release. So cities like it's in Vancouver, Chicago, Austin, Denver, Lubbock, New York City, Houston, El Paso, Los Angeles, Columbus, and Boulder. It looks to be the extent of what they have scheduled for it so far. Being released by Kino Lorber, which is a bit of a surprise, not the kind of thing they usually do, although they do distribute some newer films. They don't tend to be they tend to be more on the art house side
yeah.
than this.
But yeah,
Most of them.
consider. Oh,
Go on.
oh yeah, I was gonna say, considering releases I've seen from them recently discussed on this podcast, I'm having less of a grip on what they're about. So,
They're about what they can get their hands on.
oh, yeah, that's
Um,
great.
but
Works for me.
speaking of Kino Lorber and what they normally release, I think this next item is the thing we more usually associate with Kino Lorber, which is
Yes,
a
yes.
4K restoration of. You want to describe what we see here, if you can?
Yes, dominating the backgrounds, going deep into the poster image, ornate, still discernible, but still very ruined architecture with lots of neat little windows, flourishes, little carvings, a little cool little circular thing, which I bet had a stained glass something in it back in the day. And then going down toward the bottom of the image here, there's a little shack farmhouse looking thing flanked by some scrubby trees. And in the foreground, what do we see? We see a guy in, well, it's not a bomber jacket, but I'm going to call it an Eastern European variant of that garment. Definitely trendy, definitely artistic, and this guy is sitting next to a somewhat subdued looking dog that I'm going to say is a German Shepherd. And he's looking like he's wistful about something.
Yeah, the architecture is San Galgano Abbey,
Hmm?
outdoors. Uh, it's like an outdoor cathedral. It seems like it might be ruins, but I don't believe it was
Okay.
in Italy. And the image that's nestled inside it is a Russian pastoral scene of a Dachau and a man with his dog, who is a reflects the setting of the movie, which is a Russian in sort of exile in Italy and homesick for his home country, which of
Yeah.
course at the time Andrei Tarkovsky was in Italy and was not welcome back in his homeland of the Soviet Union due to what were viewed as far too many religious elements in his movies, and
Hmm.
Nostalgia definitely is a very heavily a religious movie, as it involves a lot of Catholicism and a lot of Orthodox Christianity. Um, of course, people who follow Tarkovsky know this movie, and it is one of his slowest
Oh, yes. Yeah,
movies.
I haven't seen the trailer for this movie either, but I have seen the movie and I even wrote a review of it for the big thing that we assembled
Ah,
over the course of those years. And yes, man, I think it stretches the word contemplative almost to breaking point.
um, sure. I mean, it's famous for the scene that goes on for about 8 minutes of a
Oh,
man attempting to carry a lit candle from one end of a empty, we'll call it a swimming pool, to another, and the wind keeps blowing it out, and he has to go back and start over. And that describes his spiritual quest, but it just goes on and on. Uh, it is a
yes.
movie um is very divisive. I mean, I think even a lot of art house fans can't take the very, very slow pace of this one, but it has a lot of wonderful mystical imagery in it, such as this scene with the cathedral, which is the basically the closing image of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, the reviews quoted on Kino Lorber are very telling here. There's one from Ingmar Bergman. Tarkovsky is for me the greatest, the one who invented a new language true to the nature of film, which doesn't talk about nostalgia specifically. The next one describes this as perhaps Tarkovsky's most opaque film. Nostalgia is nonetheless one of his most personal, which I wouldn't have used the nonetheless, but I think very well describes that, okay, we are kind of dancing around something here. And I really like Jay Hoberman's Nostalgia is not so much a movie as a place to inhabit for 2 hours.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Um, So yes, Nostalgia on in 4K. It has already been released and been in some theaters, and I just caught wind of it. Um, this re-release, of course, is going to be very much a niche item for art houses in large cities, and it's all a prelude, of course, to a 4K UHD release that's coming up in April. So if you are a Tarkovsky fan and want to see it in theaters, it's a good time to go.
Yeah,
Uh, and you live in a big city that
yeah, yeah.
has a big screen art house theater. Otherwise, you can wait till April if you have a UHD player, and Nostalgia will be out. Speaking of things coming out once again on UHD, here's one that's quite a bit livelier, as you can tell from this image, which Giles will
Heck,
describe in no great detail, because if he did, we would definitely run out of time.
I can tell you it's more lively just from the font for the title, Greg. But the image here is a young woman, a young page boy haircut redhead Animated, mind you, worth pointing out here, with a playful smile and a comparably playful expression in her eyes, and her face and form is made up of dozens of other little images, kind of themed mosaic style that kind of bleed in and out to craft this sort of bust size portrait of this dynamic looking individual. Lots of fantastical elements lurking about in the small doodlings back here. Strangely colored people, stone people perhaps, awesome masks. I see a couple fish. All told, there's a whole lot going on here. And but it all kind of nicely gels together from the mid distance into, oh, there's a young woman, the titular young woman, no less, for this film, Paprika.
Satoshi Kon. Have you seen Paprika, Giles?
No, I hadn't even known it existed until I got your topics email, and then I read your review and thought, I really want to see this movie. So,
Oh yeah, I think it would be a very very good one for you since you like cartoons, and it's a cartoon. You
yes,
like
yes, the
cartoons.
fine Japanese cartoon tradition.
Paprika, of course, is one of our 366 weirdest movies of all time, as is Nostalgia. And as I said, it's a dream movie. It's a movie about this young woman. Paprika is an alter ego of a investigator who exists only in dreams. We have a situation where dream technology, which was being used for the good purposes of psychoanalysis, has been stolen by evil forces and is now being used for disruptive ends, and a couple of detectives must investigate this. It is one of Satoshi Kon. Satoshi Kon, of course, only made 4 feature movies before dying way too young in his 40s of cancer. And they are all above average. The 2, I think, that reach the status of masterpiece or near masterpiece are Perfect Blue, which is probably his best film, but close on its heels is his final film, Paprika, which, as I say, is full of everything. It's very as minimalist as Tarkovsky is. This one is almost as maximalist, full of trippy imagery. Paprika becoming a butterfly and being sort of violated in a pseudo-sexual manner. Lots of stuff going on. Giants, little toys on parade, living Buddha statues,
Yeah, they're still on the
frogs.
website. Very delightful looking little froggy marching band.
Yes, a Dixieland frog band, all sorts of wonderful things to see. And it in a story that, as hallucinogenic as it is something that, sticks together, can be followed, has a beginning, middle, and an end. And a lot of people will think that's the best of both worlds. You get the weird and you get a coherent story along with it. And so that's on UHD. Blu-ray, there's new features of some interviews with some of the surviving animators. No other special features reported for that, but
Oh,
that's
and yeah,
enough.
and for those who like that sort of thing, this is a steel book,
Hmm.
so it will be shiny on your shelf.
Yes, that's from Sony. And so that's going to be it for right now. We'll be back very soon with Keith John Adams. I want to say John Keith, but it's Keith John Adams.
John.
And Giles, any closing thoughts in this final minute before we bring on our guest?
No, nothing in particular. A fascinating array of compelling titles this week, so I was very happy to discuss those and have some leads for myself.
Okay. Well, we're going to log off briefly and check out the facilities, and we'll be back very soon with Keith John Adams to discuss Ozma, the telepathic jellyfish movie with a great soundtrack.
Great.
So see you momentarily.
Bye, everybody.
What? Sorry, what's your?
Hello, and we're back with Keith John Adams, who I just interrupted in the middle of a question, but we're gonna soldier on, and if it was an important question, he'll.
I think it may have had to do with who I am. I'm Giles.
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 Gentlemen, I'm very jet lagged, and I've been drinking wine. Oh, look, it's invisible. It won't.
Ooh.
Oh,
there we go.
I've been drinking invisible wine, and so if I seem a little, it could go either way, couldn't it? It could be worse or better for that reason. So, anyway, go ahead, guys.
Well, I have thought Giles doesn't drink, but I have thought of doing a version of the show where everyone is drunk, the interviewer and interviewee. So
Yeah.
this will be maybe a dry run, but we're going to talk about Keith John Adams movie Ozma, which is a movie I just like to, it's a 2-word pitch, telepathic jellyfish, and that's. You're either in when you hear that or you're out. And we were in, of course.
I got you to do the marketing, Gregory, because that's a good, yeah. They call that high concept, don't they?
That's very high.
Idea of a telepathic jellyfish. Yeah.
Well, go ahead. How do you describe the movie? So.
Well, it is. I think it is. You could describe it as telepathic jellyfish with a mixture of. It's about loss as well, of course, which is woven in there, and it's also got that strong musical element, which is musicians. A lot of them session musicians in London, people from the underground scene in London, who are friends of mine from years of being a musician. Are playing in the background, providing a kind of live score for what happens with the actors. The actors mostly, ignoring them actually until right at the end. You might have noticed. I don't know. Not many people notice that, but right at the end, our main character does notice a musician. I don't think that's
the final musician at the point of climax there, right?
Yes.
Or on, however you want to.
So
yeah.
I would say, as I happen to know, the movie won Best Score at the Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, and I would say the music is maybe, other than telepathic jellyfish, the music is the most memorable and outstanding element, and so. One of my questions was going to be, do you have a musical background, which I assumed was yes, and it seems like it is, but can you describe it in your musical background in more detail?
Well, I've been making music all my life, mostly in sort of quirky independent bands here in London, playing in the UK. I've toured as a kind of solo singer-songwriter. Japan, the US several times, Europe many times. And I've actually kind of, because I've been involved in making music videos in the past, one of the things that I'd always thought was, wouldn't it be neat to, have that musical element in a feature film, have a narrative which was strung together and have almost like, almost music videos, but of course, the narrative would be the stronger element. And actually, when I was editing the film, I discovered that I really couldn't put too much music in because I did have sort of 3 or 4 minute performances, and I found that they did distract and detract from the narrative. So I ended up chopping them down to about a minute each. So hopefully the music doesn't get in the way of the story. But it is nevertheless, it's a really notable element of the film, of course.
Yeah, I thought it was integrated perfectly. It did not interrupt the narrative flow. It was usually, so there's a concept called diegetic music, which is music that the characters can hear, and most soundtrack music is non-diegetic, meaning the characters can't actually hear it, which is sort of the case here. until, as you say, the end, except you can see the musicians playing. And they were almost, was there any point when they were usually superimposed? Was there any point when they were actually in the same room with the actors doing the performance?
Oh no, they frequently were actually. Yes, there. I mean, most of the performances are actually live with the actors there. So for your audience who won't be aware, but there's a scene, for instance, on a staircase where there is a jazz saxophonist called Terry Edwards, who's quite a notable musician in his own right. He's played with PJ Harvey, and he's done something with Tom Waits in the past, I think. And he is with a friend of mine, Rodri, improvising on the stairs. And I said to them, look, the actor's going to walk past you. I want you to improvise a feeling of anxiety in short bursts of 30 seconds, because at the end of the 30 seconds, there will be a voiceover. So that was a very free-form thing with the actors there. And actually, even when, also the kitchen scene, I don't know if you remember, there's a cellist and a viola player. They are on the table playing along at the same time. So and there's an element of both. It's not completely one thing or the other. I thought it was quite important for me to have some of the scenes with the musicians in the room, because it was just it was kind of pushing that button for me that they were present. And one thing about the film is it's not entirely clear whether it's a dreamscape or if it's real or if it's in the imagination of my main character Jeff, played by Ferdy. But I thought the musicians added to that sense that we didn't know whether this was a dream or not. And in truth, I don't know whether it's a dream or not. It is ambiguous even to the author of the film.
Giles, do you have a question?
Just thinking, considering even if it's shall we say not a dream, the main character Jeff is established as someone who's kind of fleshing out his own inner mindscape all the time anyway. So he's talking to a woman he knew in his past fairly regularly, and considering the hints that are shown for this guy's interest in sound in general, it would make sense for him to fashion this, music scape to his own self, and as such have the presence of those making that sound. So I think it works even if it's real, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people watching the film would think it perhaps would be incredible to suggest it was real. But I kind of live in an infinite universe where I think everything is happening all at the same time. So for me, I think that's a good point, though. Within what we know of Jeff, it's entirely coherent that could be in his mind. Absolutely.
Sticking with the music for at least one more question. So I was thinking, it's having the musicians playing there, visible, but still non-diegetic, was a interesting idea. It seems like something somebody would have come up with before. I could not think of any examples. I mean, the closest thing I could think of is maybe Oh Lucky Man, where they would break away to a scene of, but they were sort of a separate scene, a scene of a guy singing the song.
But I think you have hit a nail on a head there, because I remember seeing that and it having an impact on me. And so that is definitely an influence there. The film Birdman, I don't know if you saw that one-shot movie. It's supposed to be with some hidden. There is a jazz drumming score to that, and occasionally the camera catches the drummer once in the back of the theatre and once on the street, and it ties in. He is actually playing the score as they go past, so that's brilliantly choreographed in that movie, and I love that. And also, I can't remember which Dogma movie it is. One of the I think it's Festen. But if you remember the Scandinavian Dogma movies, the rules were that you could not put incidental music in the films. That was part of their rules that they gave for themselves. And there's one where you can hear a melodica playing in the background. I can't remember if it's The Idiots or Festen, but I remember seeing that film and thinking, I can hear a melodica. Would it detract from the film for me if I saw the melodica player? And I thought it wouldn't. So all of these things fed this idea. And the idea to have the music in the film like that was kicking around long before the broader story came to me. And when the idea came to me of Jeff and the jellyfish, and thought this was something that I thought I could do with my limited resources, then I thought, okay, I'm going to do that thing with the musicians. I'm going to tie in all the musicians. And then when I wrote a list of all the musicians I knew and tried to make it varied, I realized that I could reflect different mindsets of Jeff using those musician friends of mine and their different skills. So everything came together beautifully, as things do, accidentally, you know. Yeah.
Giles.
Yeah, well, it's that was a good two keywords you got there. Limited resources. This is one of a kind of movie I am growing to appreciate more and more, where I see that there is, shall we say, and this is not at all an insult, not a lot of money being, spigoted across the screen and, saturating this, that, and the other shot with things, but still making something that is very different and very interesting. And in this case, certainly sonically, rather, bordering on unique there. With these limited resources, you have a great little cast that you've assembled. I'm wondering if you might talk about Finding Ferdy, for example, and the two characters I actually found the most interesting were that pair of sort of police style entities. So if you might want to talk about how you got your on-screen non-musician crew together, I'd be very interested in that.
Yes, well, I suppose COVID plays a role here, Giles, because it was the end of 2020 when I was coming up with the project, and the character who plays Joanne is a friend of mine, Gemma, who is an actress who's worked in theatre and various different things, and she was the kind of first follower in that I showed her the script and I said, I really want to do this. And she said, I will do anything I can to help you. And so she helped me get Ferdy, because she had been in a theatre company with him called Filter. Huh. And I'd seen him do Hamlet, actually, years ago. And I thought, if I ever make a film, I want that guy, because he had great presence, Yeah. And he brings such a lot of gravity to my film. I really have to thank him, because he becomes the centre of it, as you'll know from seeing it. And he brings a lot of... his character has got so much stillness and depth to it that I think he really brought out the themes that I wasn't sure that we were going to get there. Mm. Anyway, how COVID comes into this is, of course, these are theatre people who work in the theatre more, who weren't working in the theatre because the theatres were still closed, even though we were coming out of the pandemic. So I had access to Ferdy. I had access to Victoria, who's one of the police officers, and Jun, who is the Korean guy, who is the other police officer. I found him online as an actor who lived in East London. He didn't live in East London when I contacted him, but these are actors that I don't think I would have got otherwise. And in order to make it work, I paid them a kind of hourly rate, almost like an Uber driver. They were gig economy actors for me, but they wouldn't have done it, I think, if they hadn't have liked the project. I sent them all the script and a storyboard that they really liked. Mm-hmm. So I managed to get these actors. Gemma helped, but it was COVID really that helped. And then because it took 2 years to shoot it over sort of short periods, and I needed to do pickup scenes and extra bits. The second year that I was making it, Ferdy, our Jeff character, had got landed the role of Prospero in The Tempest at Shakespeare's Globe, which is a massive role for him. Yeah. So we went through a year of me sort of calling him and saying, oh, God, Ferdy, I just need you to come back to East London for 2 days to hold on to the jellyfish and then run down. And then there's the bit with the kite. And then, but it was quite difficult to get him drag him back because he had this huge responsibility of carrying this enormous play in Shakespeare's Globe, which is a very iconic theatre,
Right.
obviously, in London. Anyway, I was so lucky though to get that cast, and the good thing for me, I've made short films before, but this is my first feature, and I was spoiled, and I loved it. And working with them, all of the lines that I gave them, they really elevated them, you know. And you may see in the film that I enjoy. There are certain kind of lines which are quite hammy, and you know, all of those notes were there intentionally, and they got it, and we had lots of fun making the film. But yeah, the cast, I was extremely lucky. And who else is in it? There's also the other person I'd like to say. The first person you see is a Lynn Ruth Miller. She's a comedian. She was in her 80s, and very sadly, she died a couple of months after we made the film, so she never got to see it. But she she's kind of woman in her 80s, came and agreed to give me the great start to the film, because she kind of carries the jellyfish. You can't see it; it's in a cardboard box.
Oh yeah, the introduction abandonment kind of.
Yes, the first scene, and I really wanted someone with some good lines in their face, and she gave me that. So I'd like to mention her as well. God bless you, Lynn. Thank you very much.
And the actress, is it Ava Magyar, did just the voice? So I imagine you were able to. So she just did a voiceover. You were able to schedule her more easily, I would guess.
Yes, we did all that. Actually, we did all of that in one sitting, and she. I wanted. I've got two Hungarian female friends, and I've always liked their voices. So again, I went on the hunt for a Hungarian actress who lived in London, and I found her, Ava. She's been in a few notable. She's been in one of the X-Men movies.
Yeah.
And she's got quite a successful acting career, but she's known in Hungary as a physical actor. If you Google her, Eva Magyar, she's kind of was at the forefront of kind of experimental dance theatre in Budapest. And then, you know, the idea that I give her this voiceover role is slightly ridiculous because she's such a physical actor.
Especially for such a gelatinous role too.
Yes, she can. But anyway, she again brought a real seriousness to it. That, I mean, because the film could veer into comedy quite easily. I mean, it is comedic in many ways, but I love the way that the cast played everything straight, and that was all them really. They really used their guts, read the parts, and then they just treated it very, very seriously. And that was a good lesson for me as a director as well, to trust the cast. Half of the time when we did table reads, I'd sort of say, "Oh, could you try doing that a bit broader? Give me a bit more passion. Give me." And 9 out of 10 times I was wrong, and I had to say to them, "No, stick with what you were originally doing." You know. So, but yeah, the cast. I was blessed, gentlemen. I was blessed.
Speaking of having a low means and low budget, I wanted to ask, what was Ozma? And I do not mean where did this jellyfish come from, but the actual prop that you use to represent her. What did you use for that? And what was your?
Yeah, so this is real Ed Wood B-movie stuff, you know. I tried different substances. I ended up using a mixture of gelatine and glycerine. Viewers, you can try this at home because these are not toxic. If you mix those two ingredients together, they form a sort of semi-rigid, transparent material. And people use that for making molds, for making candles and such things. And so I found that I experimented, and then I used a huge it's like a fire pit, filled it with materials, and then I was quite involved, you know, and there was lots of experimentation. But in the end, I created a huge jellyfish creature, it weighed a ton, and poor Ferdy was really knackered after carrying this thing around. And then I inserted lights within it, that would flash and pulse. And then I also inserted a light in it, which was brighter than all the rest, with a push button device that I created. And I would have an actress off screen, not Ava, but another actress who was doing the jellyfish lines with Ferdy as he was acting, and pressing the button to emphasize when the jellyfish was telepathically communicating. Frequently these things fell apart, you know, and I went through. I probably made about 6 or 7 of them in the end, and then there's also I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say there is a baby jellyfish in it, made of the same stuff. I also did things where I'm spoiling the magic for anyone who hasn't seen the film. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I also placed a mechanical device within the jellyfish, operated by a bicycle brake handle, which the actress operating the lights was also squeezing every now and then to give it some movement and life. So it is a real kind of lo-fi effect, that. And I wanted it, you know, the film is obviously riffs on kind of the B-movie aesthetic. And also my memories of black and white Doctor Who episodes where, you know, the effects are practical. And I mean, part of the idea behind the film for me was that I'm interested in how far the audience will go in suspending its disbelief if it's pulled into the story, and whether you know, how much realism needs to be in this kind of cinema. So for me, there's you know, with lots of the props and the things, you can tell that they are very lo-fi DIY props, and I hope that that kind of adds to the charm of the piece rather than takes you out of the story.
Giles, question.
Oh yeah, no, just considering this explanation here with pushing that envelope, the enforcement weapon of the lady police individual is not quite a baton, but more organic than that.
Yeah. Yes.
Which only, I guess, yeah, not that it necessarily became clear why, but it seemed more fitting when they you had the first scene of those two communicating with their boss, and the means by which they were doing that.
Yeah.
Certainly the premise is striking. The jellyfish is fantastic, but I personally ultimately became more fascinated, yes, as I alluded to before, with those two characters. And I guess I will want to ask if you might elaborate on them, not too much for the sake of, you know, not giving away, you know, story, narrative, and all that, but their inception, because, yeah, a jellyfish talking telepathically is weird, but they seem up to something much, much stranger.
Yeah. I don't know. They well, I mean, the question one asks is, who are they working for?
Right.
You know, is this a government agency? I mean, you know, I needed villains in the piece, but I also, like you, Giles, I became drawn to them as I was writing them, and particularly the policeman, Jun. He's so put upon by the police woman. She really treats him badly, and you know, there's that old maxim about when you're writing a script that or a story, that you should take your main character, put them in a tree, and throw rocks at them. So it was great to have someone else who was suffering as well as Jeff, you know, and it was great that his suffering goes on a journey ultimately through the film. You know, they are novel. As for their weapon of choice, I mean, part of my decision making there was that I was wondering, what, again, with that suspension of disbelief, do we need violence to be explicit in order for us to think it's violent? And even if even if it is comedic, is it still not violence? You know, and so I think lots of ideas like that were going around in my mind. But ultimately, I don't think it can be a spoiler. They are cucumbers that they use. Film. Much like my jellyfish, we went through a lot of cucumbers because when you hit someone with a cucumber, it usually breaks.
Yeah.
So we went through a lot of cucumbers, and there's a scene on the Thames at the end of the film. Part of the joy of low budget filmmaking is shooting things in a guerrilla style without any permits and just enjoying the adventure of that. And when I had the scene towards the end where my two police really attacked my main character with these cucumbers, and the actors were very nervous about this, and I made sure it was the last scene we did. But within about 3 minutes, we heard police sirens wailing, and the two police cars turned up on the Thames and stopped us filming and said, "We've got reports of a fight going on here. What's happening?" And I said to the police, "Well, this gentleman is trying to get a jellyfish to Cleopatra's Needle just over there, and these two police are beating him with cucumbers." and the police just said, "Great, carry on." Had their weapons been bona fide batons, then maybe we wouldn't have got away with that. So in the end, that it was a creative decision, but it ended up having a practical use when the real police turned up on the scene.
There was something very Monty Python-esque about that description.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there is. Look, Terry Gilliam is one of my filmmaking heroes from the Python days, up until his most recent stuff. And there's a Python sensibility probably in this film, I think, in there as well, I guess.
But
I mean, all of the silliness of my film, of course, has got this. All of the grief and the loss, and there's a suicidal thing in it, which kind of balances it off, I think. So that's something that hopefully people who watch the film, when I've said to them, "Did you think it was whimsical?" they become quite angry with me because there are a lot of people who've been quite moved by it. So I'm pleased to say that there is a balance to all that B-movie. And the absurdism of it. I suppose I am an absurdist, really. I love absurdism and surrealism, and so that I can't really divorce myself from that when I'm creating anything.
you did also bring in, so you talked a little bit about the locations and shooting without permits, which is something I was going to talk about, but since you mentioned Cleopatra's Needle, it plays an important role in the film. And so I was sort of wondering, did you write that into the script because you knew you wanted to use the location and then kind of reverse engineered it to add it in, or how did that evolve, basically, the use of that location? And it brings about a whole Egyptology subplot.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, so if you live in London, and you every now and then you pass it, and it's not very auspicious, the place it's in. It's on the Thames. It's kind of away from the main tourist drag, so a lot of people wouldn't visit it. And the story of that obelisk. I mean, of course, there are obelisks in New York and Paris, but the story of it coming, I'd already heard that it was brought in this cylinder and that people had died. So when I sort of started bringing that together with the jellyfish, the ocean, so lots of storylines came together, and I've always loved visiting that and looking up at it. And actually, when I was researching for the film, which was great, actually, just reading loads about, and I've got a book about all of the needles. These are Egyptian obelisks, which go back to ancient Egypt, and they go back further than Cleopatra. It's called Cleopatra's Needle, but it actually predates Cleopatra by about 1,000 years. And I read in one of the books that it's very likely that Moses would have looked up at that obelisk that you can now look up at in on the Thames. So I didn't write it in just because I wanted the location, but I was aware of that certainly when I was writing it in, and I was also aware that because it wasn't in the centre of London, because it was on the periphery by the Thames, that if my film was something that happened overnight, I would be able to film there. I could get away with it. I think if I had have said that that the focal point for the jellyfish had been Nelson's Column, which is in Trafalgar Square, or the Houses of Parliament, or one of these other things, which wouldn't have worked in a narrative way, but it also would have presented problems for filming it. So expediency is included in why the Cleopatra's Needle features. But it was also an amazing thing. It's a 3,000-year-old relic tied to all of this ancient belief in these many gods. So it worked in this fantastical way. And it was amazing to me that it hadn't been in other things. I think there was a Marvel thing that came out when I was a year and a half into making the film, and it with lots of Egyptology in it. The night moon. Sorry, gentlemen, my wine is preventing me from.
The Moon Knight TV series.
Yeah, TV series. The
Moon Knight, I believe, is
the Moon Knight, which has got lots of Egyptology in it. And I was biting my fingernails watching this thing, thinking, please don't go to Cleopatra's Needle. Thankfully, they didn't go to Cleopatra's Needle, so Cleopatra's Needle is mine, you know. It belongs to my movie.
And of course, with the Egyptian thing also ties in well with the ultimate fate of the two enforcement officers.
Yes, we won't. Let's not go there, Giles. But I'm so glad you picked up on that, because it is, in fact, yes, meaningful. Let's say it's a resonance. Yes.
Okay, we have about 6 minutes left, so we have probably time for maybe one question, then a final question in the last 2 minutes or so. Giles, do you have another question?
Not on deck that hasn't been really well discussed.
How about films shot in black and white, although I think it's a little closer to sepia. It's a little graded, or?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because I shot the film in color. I knew I wanted it to be black and white, and when I put it in black and white, it seemed cold. I love monochromatic filmmaking, you know, and I just love it aesthetically. You know, a lot of people have asked, why is it in black and white? And it's almost like they want me to say something other than I like the look of it. But the truth is, I like the look of it. I think who hasn't looked at a picture of themselves in black and white until they look better? You know, and one of my actresses actually said to me, she was terrified when we had the premiere at the Prince Charles Sci-Fi Festival in London, at the Prince Charles Cinema on a huge screen in front of 300 people, and she was terrified that it wasn't going to be very flattering. And she thanked me afterwards, because it does, you know, it looks great. But I found when I just gave it that sepia edge, just a little bit of warmth to it, it seemed to work more with the surrealism of the piece, and it was less cold, and it was very interesting to me that how much more it pleased me anyway. And of course, if you go back into the history of silent cinema, there's a lot of tinting going on in silent cinema in the days. Of course, it's been forgotten now, so we see a lot of silent film, or you catch it on YouTube or buy a DVD, and it's and what we're forgetting is that when they were released at the time, they would have been colorized, I believe. Giles, you sound like you know about that.
Oh yeah, I have a familiarity with it. There was a whole lot of playing around with I guess I might not to sound dismissive here, but primitive forms of colorization. Certainly everything was typically shot in that monochromatic, black and white, and sometimes one of my favorites is there's a very silver tone kind of black and white that wasn't very widely used, but whenever I see it, it's cool to have a shiny black and white cinema. And so there were all kinds of neat space. The space between full black and white and color, there have been all kinds of things explored in that, which digging back a couple decades now to when I was getting my film degree, but I definitely know what you're talking about, and that they would play around with color before and after the fact, either in the processing or even in the exhibition. There were certain things that could be done to, give it, it was usually just one kind of tone, but it could vary from, shot to shot kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for the effects in the film, that I have manipulated the film in digital ways, and I think if I'd have left it in color, it would have looked slightly cheap. But because the black and white I used, it masks, and because it is sort of referencing black and white B movies and stuff like that, the digital effects become hopefully more hidden within the piece. So you can't tell. But yeah, that's why it's black and white, I suppose, largely.
Oh,
I must. When it came to selling the film, I was maybe I'm quite naive, but we spoke to several distributors who aren't interested because it's color, and they just say, well, the audience won't want. Sorry, black and white. The audience won't want a black and white film. I was like, well, do these people know about the history of cinema? I mean, it's incredible to me that people won't be willing black and white film.
Yeah, I know that that sentiment's more common than I'd like to be sure. Yeah, but I suppose.
So let's mention where people can see the movie. Do you actually know where people can see the movie? It's on all sorts of streaming platforms.
Yeah, it's in the USA and Canada, where I'm assuming most of your audience are. You can watch it on most of them. I think it's on Apple. It's on YouTube. You have to pay for it, but it's on YouTube, and it's on Vudu.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one?
Yep.
Vudu, yes.
Okay. Or you could use Vudu to try and conjure up the film and then watch it perhaps on the back of someone's head. I don't know. Yeah.
All right.
What else? Oh, there's a library. There's a library service it's on called Hoopla.
Hoopla. Yeah.
I was so pleased because I'm such a supporter of libraries. When I was told that it's on Hoopla and you can watch it in a library, that did give me a little thrill. So yeah.
And then one final question, which Giles will ask, and we got about a minute to answer it, so you'll have to go quick. But go ahead.
We like to close. We like to close off every interview we do with a double-barreled question. What's your hometown, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
Yes, I can. I'm in London. It's a small village in the south of England, and the restaurant I would recognise is Homie's on Donkeys. It's a Mexican restaurant very close to where I live in East London. It's too hot though. My wife thinks it's okay, but I think it's far too spicy, and you end up drinking far too much. And that, I believe, is the end of our interview. Gentlemen, I have really enjoyed myself.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I'm always going to drink with interviews from now on.
From now on, yeah. Great. We go by fast.
Thanks so much.
Keith John Adams.
Yeah, and I love your website.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me.
We're tuning out. See everybody next week. Thank you so much, Keith.
So long, guys.